Welcome to September 28th. The weather is still working in my favor, and from my understanding, that's going to hold true for most of October. So I'm hoping that it continues that way, because it has slowed some of his progression down a bit. From my abandonment of the city of Kharkov, plus my retreat back about 20 hexes, he's only been able to cut that in half as of now. So he's still about 5 to 8 hexes away from my lines in this area. Unfortunately, the city of Sevastopol does fall, but as known, I did not really devote much to defending that city. So does the city of Rostov. We will return to this as I take a little closer look at it, but I was hoping I could get like one more week out of that town. The area that did surprise me is the Voronezh region. As I said in my previous video, everything I expected was to come straight for the city itself. I reinforced southeast of it because that's where he hit last week. And it didn't work. He went straight to the northwest of it, pushed a hole completely through my weakened lines there. This puts potentially Saratov at risk, so I'm going to have to address this in some fashion. To make things even harder on my Soviet forces is about a dozen battles stretching from Tula all the way to the Vada Hills. This is going to make it very difficult for me to plan a defense of Moscow without falling back at least a little bit more. The city of Leningrad went pretty much as planned. My troops are entirely too exhausted in this region, so the fortress fell in one turn, and the city is still mine. Probably not as we start next week. Taking a glance at my casualties, this is where the bulk of my losses came. Pretty much all those guns and those 250,000 men were either in the Rostov, Sevastopol regions, but mostly in Leningrad. So taking a look to how I begin my turn, you can see a little bit of movement, but for the most part, pretty much the status quo from the end of last week. Taking a closer look to the Battle of Rostov, I expected it to be all Romanian forces, because that's the way it looked in the previous turn. Instead, he comes through with 4 divisions of Germans, with pioneer battalions and the like. So 140,000 men's not what I expected to face my 10,000. I guess I should be happy that those 13 guns got taken out and somehow killed 400 people. What I am excited for, though it won't be in this playthrough, in the new beta, they're finally going to allow you to move the symbols that get in the way of planning flight paths, so I won't sit here and struggle like this constantly. But for now, in this moment in time, I'm just running this one recon mission. I'm going to also bomb an infantry division in the Crimea. Honestly, as it unveils itself, I'm pretty surprised that this is where he has air support. I thought there'd be much more up in the Rostov area. So, still lose a handful of bombers is not that big of a deal at this point in time, but I definitely didn't expect it to be in this region. So my recon mission cost me 9 airplanes. It doesn't see any ground troops in the Donetsk area. I'm not able to take advantage of this information because I would love to be able to try to turn his lines. With his successful offensive operations in this area, I'm going to retreat. I'm expecting him to not further follow that up this next turn. I think it's going to happen once again, more in the south. So I will have to wait and see on that. Luckily, I did bring in some new units in this area, though it's just 3 cavalry divisions and an infantry division, but anything here will help. I'm hopeful to be able to hold that main railroad line stretching north to south, but it's been somewhat of a difficulty of me to defensively plan for anything. And part of that planning has to start a little bit further northward. I gotta stretch things out a little bit, which means I'm gonna have to fall back a bit. So the idea is to focus along that river as much as I can where the swamp terrain continues to exist southeasterly. So at some points of it, it's gonna still remain weak. I can't be strong everywhere. So I'm trying to figure out how to save some of those units that are at risk of being cut off at the bottom of the screen. So I'm gonna have to use probably a lot more fortified regions. Unfortunately, the result of this is probably going to be a little bit weaker of lines for the next week or so. So this might backfire, but my hope is to bring more men into this to strengthen it. So ideally, weather will be on my side as we get into October. And for the most part, that is the strategy that I'm going to be employing for the next couple weeks. With the Russian spies allowing me to know that Japan's not attacking, I now have a lot of units moving from the Far East into the area. I don't have enough in my reserve box to make me happy, but I do have a nice size unit coming. Other than that, my hope and plan and strategy in this area is to try to resupply Leningrad. I think I get maybe 100 pounds of freight or tons of freight gets here, so it's not quite what I needed in order to make it difficult on them next week. But other than that, I do get some of my the Leningrad front gets out of here, and we try to sneak the 8th out. What about you? Yeah, do you die? He dies. I had a feeling that was gonna happen. But with my admin points in the very important section of the front here, I replaced the 30th Army leader with Bobkin. So that cost, I believe, 14 points. I'll spend another 6 on 3 different fortified regions. And now I await another turn to come back my way. But hopefully these decisions are for the best, and this is what my opponent will be looking at when he gets his turn. And we'll have something very similar to this when I get mine.